The Undertaker, he's set for his final farewell at Survivor Series in a couple of weeks' time. Of course, it's the 30th anniversary of the debut of The Undertaker at the very event Survivor Series. It's a big deal, and WWE are hyping up this very big deal of this potential final farewell for the dead man. Now, last week, WWE, they issued a press release announcing that The Undertaker would be making an appearance at Survivor Series. We knew that was the case anyway, thinking about it, because WWE had actually hyped this up, I believe, as far back as Hell in a Cell. I think the insider wrestling account WrestleVotes on Twitter, they announced that it was going to be 30 years of The Undertaker, but this was the first time we got a little bit of an inkling as to the real plans for The Undertaker at this event, of it being the final farewell of the dead man. Now, the press release said, Undertaker's final farewell will recognise the Phenom's legendary 30-year career at Survivor Series on Sunday, November 22nd, streaming at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time on the award-winning WWE Network. One of the most iconic superstars in WWE history and a sports entertainment phenomenon, Undertaker made his debut at Survivor Series on November 22nd, 1990. From his debut with Brother Love to his critically acclaimed match against AJ Styles at this year's WrestleMania, Undertaker has been involved in some of the most memorable moments in WWE history. Now, it goes on to talk about his WrestleMania undefeated streak, winning his first 21 matches at the annual extravaganza. Doesn't mention when it was broken, because in my opinion that's still the wrong decision. The streak should have never been broken, but I understand. Business is business and these things happen. But as part of Undertaker's farewell and 30th anniversary, WWE, they've been celebrating what they call 30 years of the dead man. This has been throughout November. This includes recently debuted documentaries on the WWE Network, including Meeting the Undertaker, which I watched. I thought it was interesting. It's just about WWE superstars recounting the first time that they met the Undertaker, which was always interesting. It's always interesting to peek behind the curtain towards the Undertaker. Of course, for 30 years, we really haven't seen that much of him outside of his character, or out of character, out of kayfabe. And obviously now that he's retired, maybe, we're seeing more and more, and he's doing more interviews, and it still is fascinating just to hear his opinions on things, hear his stories, his perspective on certain events. It's just absolutely fascinating. Other documentaries that WWE have uploaded during this period of time to the WWE Network include WWE Untold, The Phenom and the Legend Killer on the WWE Network. That included the rivalry, and it sort of documents the rivalry between The Undertaker and Randy Orton. From 2005, well, from the start of 2005 to the end of 2005, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's a really interesting rivalry. One of my I would say a favorite rivalry of mine. Parts of it were not great. But some parts of it I thought were brilliant. I mean, the WrestleMania match between The Undertaker and Randy Orton for me was absolutely superb. It really was superb. I mean, if that show doesn't have Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels on, it's the match of the show. It really is. But that match between Randy Orton and The Undertaker almost gets forgotten a little bit because of the Angle-Shawn Michaels match, but it was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Obviously, you had the match at SummerSlam, which was okay, but you had the inclusion of Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., you had the Hell in a Cell match, which I really liked. You had a ton of stunts in there as well. Whether it's setting the casket on fire, Undertaker returning out of a casket, getting reversed on a lowrider through the SmackDown set, which explodes, all of that sort of stuff. You know, peak Undertaker, really. It was fantastic, and it's fantastic to see the insight of both Randy Orton, a young Randy Orton at the time, and now an older Randy Orton, discussing that and where his mind was at the time and what an opportunity it was for him. And then The Undertaker, of course, recalling his version of events as well and talking about trying to elevate Randy Orton but also prove that he can still go. It's a fascinating watch. It's an absolutely fascinating watch. Another documentary that's been uploaded as part of this 30 years of The Undertaker was The Mortician, the story of Paul Bearer, which premiered only this Sunday, so it premiered yesterday on the WWE Network, which I have already watched. If you're a WWE geek, if you're a pro wrestling geek and you're a pro wrestling just fan, and you love a peek at behind the curtain and just stories that have occurred over the years, just the Mortician, the story of Paul Bearer, is a must watch for me. I really enjoyed it. You know, Paul Bearer, obviously, it's synonymous with The Undertaker. The Undertaker and Paul Bearer, they're so connected, and I think for the modern fan that's only seen The Undertaker just being The Undertaker by himself, you kind of, I don't want to say you've forgotten about Paul Bearer, because I think that's almost a bit disrespectful, but some people don't know the significance of Paul Bearer to The Undertaker, and Paul Bearer to Mankind and Kane as well, and just seeing the story of Paul Bearer, the character, but also Bill Moody, the man, for me made that such a fascinating watch, and seeing about his return in 2004 and how WWE as a signing on bonus paid him 35 grand to get gastric bypass surgery, and that he was also working behind the scenes in WWE, and the story about him and his wife and coming back and all of that sort of stuff. It's a fascinating watch. It's a great documentary. Again, the thing for me when it comes to the WWE network, if you don't own the network, and obviously the key thing for the network is getting the events every month, whether it is Survivor Series, WrestleMania, get it for $9.99. That's money value alone, really. But for me, the best thing about the network is the documentaries. The documentaries that WWE does on the network, they are so good. They really are so good. They are fantastic. It's always been the case. If you sign up to the network, if you just subscribe to the network, honestly, you will get some of the best documentaries anywhere. The production quality is so high, the detail is so high, and you realise as well that WWE, they tape everything. They genuinely tape everything. And in these documentaries, you see angles of things that you never knew were recorded. You know, you see camera angles of people off stage, you see camera angles of things going on backstage and reactions. They film everything, they always have. So in these documentaries, you see stuff that you never thought you could ever see. It's just fantastic. And the Paul Bearer documentary, if you haven't watched it, watch it. It's fantastic. It really is. So we've also got a documentary called Brothers of Destruction, which premiered in October at the Austin Film Festival. That's going to stream this coming Sunday on the WWE Network. Really interested in that. From the sneak peeks that I've seen so far, it's essentially The Undertaker sitting there, Kane sitting there, and they're just chatting. So that is going to be fascinating. Again, for 30 years, we haven't seen The Undertaker out of character doing interviews. A little bit more, especially now Kane's involved in politics, Glenn Jacobs, but we've rarely seen Kane, do many interviews. So to see them both there chatting, obviously the history they have, the rivalries they've had, it's going to be an absolutely fascinating watch. It really is. So I'm really excited to that. And then following from Survivor Series itself, The Undertaker once again is going to be a special guest on Steve Austin's Broken Skull Sessions, which they're not actually showing. This is the interesting thing. So they've showed sneak peeks of everything apart from the Broken Skull Sessions, which to me suggests that they're going to be kind of breaking down whatever has happened at Survivor Series, I guess. I mean, The Undertaker's already been on there. So part 2, I guess that's maybe going to discuss the retirement of The Undertaker. It's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. So as a final farewell, a final goodbye of The Undertaker, it seems to me that they're doubling down on the retirement of the dead man himself, which is interesting because obviously the retirement of The Undertaker was announced during the Last Ride documentary earlier this year. But the interesting thing about that was that he didn't properly retire. He did the classic, well, I'm done and I'm not going to wrestle again, but, never say never, and if Vince McMahon need me, break glass in terms of emergency and all this kind of stuff. And by all accounts, The Undertaker wants to retire. He wanted to retire. He said to Vince McMahon, that was the best way for me to end at WrestleMania. AJ Styles, I can't do better than that now. That's me. I'm done. That's me done. I can't do any more. I can't do any better. That's the perfect way to go out. That's what I've been looking for, essentially. For the last 3 or 4 years, The Undertaker has been looking for something to ride off into the sunset, or in The Undertaker's term, the darkness, and he quite literally did that at WrestleMania 36. But in the documentary, he wanted to say, you know what, I'm done, I'm retired. Vince McMahon didn't want him to say that. Vince McMahon insisted they put in the line of, well, never say never, and in case of emergency, break glass and all that kind of stuff. But it would appear now, to me, that The Undertaker has finally convinced Vince McMahon, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not working anymore. I'm not coming back for matches. I've done my bit. So maybe they just decided, you know what, we'll save it. The Survivor Series on November 22nd is quite literally 30 years. 30 years to the day that The Undertaker made his debut. So, if that is, maybe they saved it for that, so officially The Undertaker can retire. We'll have to see there. But I have seen some people speculating that this could all be an angle. Because why? Because it's pro wrestling. It's pro wrestling, right? Everything is an angle, and it's The Undertaker. And does The Undertaker actually ever truly retire? So maybe it is an angle. So I've seen some people speculating as to what could happen at Survivor Series, and some people are saying maybe The Undertaker come out, he could have an impromptu match. I mean, it's not out of the realms of possibility. We saw it against the John Cena at WrestleMania 34. Now, it wasn't completely impromptu because it had kind of been speculated and built up over WWE TV for weeks and months heading to WrestleMania 34, but the match itself between John Cena and between The Undertaker was impromptu. So who's to say we don't see an impromptu match between Cena and The Undertaker again at Survivor Series? Obviously, that is a massive, massive long shot, but don't rule anything out at this stage. Something that isn't a long shot, and I've seen a lot of people talking about, is a confrontation with Bray Wyatt, specifically The Fiend. The Fiend for, I think it's 2 years now, because he did it last year and he's done it this year, has been hinting about some form of confrontation with The Undertaker. Now, you've seen the numbers 11-19. Now, I mentioned they talk about The Undertaker's debut is at Survivor Series on the 22nd of November 1990, right? That's the debut of The Undertaker. Now, 11-19, what does that mean? Well, actually, the debut of The Undertaker is at Superstars. Is at WWE Superstars on the 19th of November 1990, as opposed to the 22nd at Survivor Series. That's the true debut of The Undertaker when he was known as Kane The Undertaker. So Bray Wyatt with that 11-19, that's the actual debut of The Undertaker. Now again, he's been hinting at that for 2 years now. And even on Twitter, The Fiend Bray Wyatt has been hinting that maybe he could have another confrontation with The Undertaker. There was a Twitter post that said, by WWE, that said, The Undertaker has faced everyone in his legendary career. And Bray Wyatt says, not everyone. Which again, led people to speculate, okay, The Fiend versus The Undertaker. So I really would not be stunned. Even if it's the case of The Undertaker officially retiring, but as he retires, The Fiend attacks him, and that's how The Undertaker is written off of TV. Again, I would not be stunned at all if they did that. Because Mark Calloway cares about business and he wants to put the young talent over. So I really wouldn't be surprised if we go down that direction either. So don't rule out a confrontation with Bray Wyatt, because it's an absolute possibility that that could happen. Now also, speaking of confrontations, of course we could have a confrontation with AJ Styles too. AJ Styles, of course, faced The Undertaker at WrestleMania. He was buried alive. And then just magically came back to TV a couple of months later completely fine. Guess that dirt was just easy. Doesn't crush or kill anyone at this point. AJ Styles as well has his giant bodyguard, and maybe they have a confrontation with that. So don't rule out a confrontation with AJ Styles too. Even if it is The Undertaker retiring, he could still choke slam or maybe tombstone AJ Styles. That isn't out of the realm of possibility either. It could also just be a promo, it could just be The Undertaker come out again, officially announce his retirement, do a promo, put his hat and coat in the ring similar to how he did at WrestleMania 33, and that could be it. And who's to say that even The Undertaker will come out? Maybe it's Mark Calloway that comes out. Which version of The Undertaker is going to come out at Survivor Series? Is it going to be the Dead Man? To me, the Dead Man character kind of disappeared earlier this year. Instead, we got a different version of The Undertaker. We got the biker version of The Undertaker, or sort of a hybrid. We got Big Evil. The Undertaker spoke about it being the Holy Trinity, which was actually Mark Calloway, the Dead Man, and the American Badass. It was those three characters merged into a 2020 version of The Undertaker that was a lot closer to the man. And he's always spoken about, if I come back now, I think I'm going to be that version. I'm going to be Mark Calloway. So maybe at Survivor Series, it's not the whole Undertaker hat, long trench coat and all that kind of stuff. Maybe Mark Calloway comes out on his motorbike. Now, I've obviously also seen people speculate, is this laying the foundation? Is this the groundwork for one more WrestleMania match? Now, as I mentioned, during the Last Ride documentary, Vince McMahon didn't want The Undertaker to say the words retirement. But to me, the final goodbye, which is what they're hyping this up as at Survivor Series, to me, that sounds like a retirement to me. But again, once again, like in the Last Ride documentary, they haven't used the word retire or retirement there. Now also, on Monday Night Raw at the moment, you also have the Legend Killer return. You have Randy Orton. Maybe Randy Orton is the Legend Killer once again. Maybe he punched The Undertaker. They did the documentary about their rivalry. Who's to say they don't have one more confrontation? And I mentioned that the one more WrestleMania match, and the reason that I think a lot of people are speculating that maybe, just maybe, we would have one more Undertaker match is because we didn't get the Undertaker match we thought we were going to get this year at WrestleMania. Obviously, the Undertaker had his intentions of having his retirement match this year at WrestleMania against AJ Styles, but his intentions for that match against AJ Styles was to be inside Raymond James Stadium and having 60, 70 or 80,000 people in attendance. Instead, his retirement match was against AJ Styles in the middle of the night on I think it was like a farmland or the back of someone's house in a makeshift graveyard. And that was his final match. And it was brilliant. The Boneyard match was absolutely superb. And I've said it quite a few times at this point that I don't think he could have had a better match this year. I think if the original plans were the case and it was Undertaker AJ Styles inside Raymond James Stadium, I don't think that match would have been anywhere near as good as the Boneyard match. It wouldn't have. It wouldn't have. Because Taker is limited in the ring at this point. Even AJ Styles, the tremendous and amazing worker that he is and the ability to pull a match out of anyone, I don't think they could have had a match as good as the Boneyard match. I really don't think so. And yes, the last match was cinematic, but it was the perfect ending. And I spoke about 30 years of The Undertaker, and Survivor Series, it will be exactly 30 years of The Undertaker. Being that Survivor Series 1990 was on November 22nd, and Survivor Series 2020 is on November 22nd, it's perfection. It's exactly 30 years since The Undertaker debuted, and it really is the perfect place for him to retire. The story, everything lines up. Everything lines up. And he doesn't need to have a match again. He doesn't need to have a WrestleMania match again. You don't need to start that cycle all over again. But unfortunately, this is The Undertaker. And he's always, if you watch that Last Ride documentary, he is always looking for that perfect ending. The perfect way out. The perfect match. The perfect venue. The perfect opponent. And if it doesn't live up to his expectations, he starts the cycle all over again. Oh, the match was short, I need to do another one. Oh, my performance was bad, I need to do another one. I feel pretty good, actually. I can do more matches. Saudi Arabia are calling, that's a lot of money, I'll go do that one. Australia's calling, that's a lot of money, I'll do that one. Vince needs me for Australia or Saudi Arabia, I'll do that one. And if he does come back for that one match next year at WrestleMania in the stadium, and if it doesn't go well, you can just see the wheels in motion will start up again in his head. Well, that match didn't go right. And you can already see the wheels of motion now for WrestleMania next year. Well, I didn't have that last match in front of a crowd, and I do want that perfect ending. And he is always finding something that doesn't fit. Whether it is the match is short, whether it is I feel good, whether it is that match sucked, that match didn't have a crowd, or anything. He is looking for that just complete perfection ending. And ultimately, I suppose you have to come to the conclusion that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And if anything, his match against AJ Styles at WrestleMania 36, that is as close as to perfection as he is going to get. It really, really is. So I really hope this doesn't lay the foundation for another WrestleMania match, because I don't think he needs it. And I don't think as fans we really want it. I think if you're really a fan of The Undertaker, you don't want to see him get back in the ring again. I think if you're a real true fan of The Undertaker, you saw that match at WrestleMania 36 and you went, you know what, that was perfection. And I hope this isn't the case of the fans being greedy and Vince McMahon being greedy and saying, wow, we're going to have fans back for WrestleMania, so we want to do a big show. And it's kind of like, make some stars. Do it with people on the roster. Have some faith in what you've got. Don't break the glass because of an emergency and bring back The Undertaker. You don't need to do it. You don't need to do it. So hopefully when it comes to Survivor Series in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully it is just a retirement segment. For me, I would do it like the Ric Flair retirement segment on Raw in 2008. That, to me, is the best way to do it. Because then it could be something really, really special. You think of the emotion involved in that Ric Flair Raw segment. You could have The Undertaker come out, cut a promo, talk about the business and what everything's meant to him. It's not The Undertaker, it's Mark Calloway, and say, thank you, I'm officially retired, I'm done. And then you have everyone come out. You have Triple H come out, you have Kane come out, you have Stone Cold Steve Austin, you have Vince McMahon, even a message from The Rock, whoever, whatever. Have them all come out And it could be something really, really special. Have the entire roster come out, have them clap and cheer The Undertaker, break kayfabe, whatever. Do something special and memorable. It doesn't need to be an angle. It doesn't need to be a confrontation. Do something special. Like Ric Flair in 2008 that people still talk about to this day. People would do the same for The Undertaker with Survivor Series in 2020. But unfortunately, knowing WWE, being a fan of WWE and pro wrestling for the best part of over 20 years now, something just in the back of my mind is saying, wow, you know, an angle, possibly an angle, because it's pro wrestling. And could it set up one more match, and could Taker do his retirement and then the lights come out, and then just as The Undertaker would do, the lights come back on and the Fiend is there? You know, I cannot rule that out. I cannot rule that out. And if it did happen, obviously people would go, oh my God, it's crazy, we're going to get The Undertaker versus The Fiend at WrestleMania, that would be great. And the moment would be great, but think about the execution. Think about WrestleMania. Think about the match itself. Would that be great? I don't know. And for me, I just don't. As great as the moment would be, I think just have the retirement segment, show the respect to The Undertaker, and I think that's all we need. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the plans for The Undertaker at Survivor Series? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about pro wrestling here on the channel. So leave your comments below, and I'll be sure to respond to them. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.